episode 14. Really excited to have you guys here today. I'm trying something new. I'm trying video and audio today. So up until now, the podcast has just been audio, which has been awesome, but I've been feeling like I wanted to try something a little different. So I wanted to bring video. I've been dancing around it, been talking around it. I'm so excited to actually pull the trigger and do my first video podcast today. So excited to have you guys here. And today we're talking about overthinking, probably something that I've struggled with my whole life, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So before we jump into that though, I always like to give a quick update. So today's update, I'm gonna start with music. So recently I've been listening to an artist, Plum. I don't know if it's Plume or Plum, however you pronounce it, but he's amazing. And he kind of keeps his identity, private, and we don't really know much about the artist, but what he does is he puts out these really amazing songs that are kind of remixes or mashups of famous songs that you and I would know by people we love, and he puts it into like a dance/house music style. So really been enjoying his stuff. So it's really, really good for like sunny weather, and I've been loving it specifically when I'm cycling. So I need music that has like a really, kind of upbeat feel, and been loving his stuff. So Plum, whatever his name is, highly recommend you check him out. And the playlist I've been listening to is called This Is Plume on Spotify. And by the way, if you're using Apple and not Spotify, I'm judging you, and you need to get Spotify because it is better. And that's coming from a guy who's obsessed with Apple. So moving on my trip last week, I went to AZ, as I mentioned, and I was on the plane looking for something fun to watch, and I'm always a sucker for a documentary. So I saw this documentary called The Lost Leonardo, and it was about this painting of Salvador Mundi, and apparently this is like the most expensive painting that has ever been sold, period. So it sold for $450 million, and there was all this drama surrounding it, whether or not it was legitimately painted by Leonardo da Vinci, or was it a copy? There was a lot of like restoration issues on it. Long story short, super fascinating. Highly recommend if you're into documentaries. And if you like art, you'll enjoy this even more. So as far as music, movies, that's what I've been into. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, I went to AZ last week. So me and the wife are actually moving to Arizona here in the next probably 2 months. And in fact, we listed our house for sale. We've got an offer already. So we're moving, we're grooving, folks. And really just excited to kind of check out where we were gonna live. And so spent a week down there and got to also spend some time in Washington. And it was hot, folks. It was like 115 degrees every single day. At night, it only got to like 110. So it was definitely interesting to feel the heat, but I really enjoyed my time there. And I just loved kind of just looking around and seeing what beautiful landscape it was, right? Having mountains in the backdrop was so cool. And, I'm a sucker for all the kind of the desert vegetation, cactuses, and those, kind of plants like that. So we just really, really love looking around and exploring, and I'm excited. It's coming up. We're moving there, and just kind of excited to start a new season and try new things, get out of my comfort zone, something I'm always a big fan of. So wanted to share that with you. I'm also going to start doing something new, folks. Before we jump into every episode, I'm going to kind of share a quote of the day, quote of the week, something that kind of resonates with me and maybe even ties in with what we're going to talk about during the episode. So today's quote is by Seneca. He's a Greek philosopher, and his quote is, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." So I love this quote. I'll say it again. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And the reason I love this quote is that for me, it really ties in with overthinking, and that we build these things up in our head, and that we worry about what people are going to think or what's going to happen. And a lot of times those worries are baseless. Nothing ends up happening. We've built it up in our head, and for no reason. So really love that quote, and fits in perfectly with what we're talking about today. So let's jump into it. So I always like to start with the why behind things. So why are we going to discuss overthinking? And for me, I think the main reason is it's something that I've struggled with my entire career. Ever since I can remember, I have been an overthinker. I would spend time ruminating, worrying, thinking about things, many times things that were out of my control. And with talking to my friends and people I've worked with, I noticed that this is actually pretty common. And in fact, research suggests that 73% of 25 to 35-year-olds chronically overthink, along with 52% of people ages 45 to 55. So sounds like this is something we're all dealing with, or many of us are. And so I figured, why not kind of just tackle this subject and talk about the things that I've struggled with, and hopefully, impart some wisdom on the things that I've been able to kind of get past, or the things I've been able to overcome, or strategies that I've used. So I'm excited to kind of jump into that and share with you my thoughts on overthinking. So I want to start with, why do people overthink, and specifically, why do I overthink? And so when I was putting this together, I really thought of like 3 things that come to mind. Number 1, I would say it's I worry what people think / people pleasing. Number 2, the fear of making a mistake. And then the last one would be a lack of control. So I want to kind of dive into each of those. So the worrying about what people think and people pleasing, I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm a chronic people pleaser, recovering, working on it. But this is something that kind of seeps its way in any part of my life. So when I'm overthinking, a lot of times I'm wondering what people thought about something that I did, something that I said. And I'll think about that, right? Sometimes it's people I care about. It might be a family member, a close friend, but sometimes it's a perfect stranger that I am worried what they're thinking. And for me, I don't love this about myself, but at the end of the day, I understand that it's something I struggle with. So as long as I understand it's something I struggle with, then I can strategically overcome it and label it and realize, hey, this is just a moment in time. This is not who I am or my entire being. This is just how I'm feeling right now. So that's the first one. The next one is fear of making a mistake. And, I'm just like everybody else. I don't like making mistakes. In fact, I feel disappointed in myself, and I feel like I've maybe even embarrassed myself when I make a mistake. And this is something that I have always kind of struggled with, even as a kid. I remember, if I would make a mistake, my parents would bring it to my attention. I'd even get defensive because I did not like making mistakes. And so I would do whatever I could to make as little mistakes as possible. But when I'm overthinking, a lot of times I'm worried I made a mistake. So I'm thinking about that. I'm worried about what that's going to feel like to be wrong or to have done something not perfect. So it's another reason I overthink from time to time. And then the last one, I think, is probably something we can all kind of relate to, which is a lack of control, right? There's something about feeling in control. And I love being in control when I can be, to control the outcomes and the risks and the situations. But in reality, we really don't have all that much control for a lot of things, right? We can control our actions and the things we say and our behaviors, but we can't control how people perceive it. We can't control how people understand or react to things. So if we're worried about those kind of things, we're wasting our time thinking about things that ultimately don't matter, because we really don't have the ability to affect change. And that's kind of the theme here. Overthinking is really the act of worrying about things outside of your control that you can't change. So if you're thinking about things within your control that you can change, that you could have done differently, sure, I think there's a time and place for that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're only focused on the things that you can't control, that's just worrying. That's just overthinking. So those are really the top 3 reasons why I overthink. Here are some signs though of maybe that you're overthinking. So if you hear any of these and you resonate with them, boom, might be a sign to track. Hey, I'm overthinking a little bit today. So here are, I think it's 6 things that I see in people most often. So decision-making paralysis. People that are struggling with overthinking, a lot of times they can't make decisions. They're so worried about controlling the outcome or what people are gonna think or what's gonna happen, that they kind of are paralyzed from making decisions. I see this a lot. And so this is maybe a sign that you're overthinking a little bit. Another one would be second-guessing decisions. Have you ever seen someone make a decision and then right after that second guess it and kind of worry I wonder if this was right. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. So if you're finding that you're second guessing yourself more often than not, and again, could be a sign that you're overthinking. Inability to let go. This is another one. A lot of times people will make a decision or something will happen, but they'll just ruminate over it, right? They'll just think about it over and over again. And sometimes it's showing that you just can't really let things go, that it's too important to you and it's right at the top of your mind and it's something that's consuming you. So if you're having trouble letting things go from time to time, again, another sign of overthinking. We talked about a little bit ago about the worry of stuff outside of our control. So if we're thinking about things that we can't control, how someone thinks about us, how someone's going to respond to an email we sent, again, signs that we're overthinking because we can't control that. So why spend any time thinking about things we can't affect, we can't change? I think another sign of overthinking is is when you're constantly seeking reassurance. Now, we'll talk about a little later on the value in confiding in friends and being honest about overthinking, but if every single decision and every single move in your life, everything you do, you have to get reassurance, you have to make sure that someone thinks it's a good idea, again, shows me that you might be overthinking a little bit. So I mention those signs because a lot of those I've struggled with myself, and some of them I've been able to get past, but I think a lot of people resonate with those things. At least I know my friends and family do. So we talked a little bit about the signs. Now what I want to do is transition into the risks of overthinking, because there are some risks, and I think it's important that we all know what the risks are before we start going down that path, right? Not to say that we still won't make the decision to overthink at different times, but if you know the risks up front, it can help a lot. So when it comes to the risks, 4 of them come to mind. Personal growth can be limited, anxiety and stress, wasted time, and insecurity. So I want to start with insecurity. When I overthink stuff, I feel insecure. I doubt my decision-making abilities, and I kind of doubt my performance in general, right? And when I'm feeling insecure, I'm not my best. I'm not making the best decisions, and I'm not giving the world, my wife, my friends, my employees, whatever it is, my best, because I'm not feeling like I'm on solid ground, that I have the right footing beneath me. So when you're overthinking all the time, you're gonna feel more insecure, because you're basically feeling like you can't be successful in whatever you're trying to do. So for me, that's a big risk of overthinking. I don't like feeling insecure. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life, and I think it definitely ties in with people pleasing, but feeling insecure, not a fun thing, no bueno, I don't like it. Another one is wasted time. Now, if anyone who knows me, they know that I love to waste time. I love it. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to do if it's on my terms, right? I am not opposed to playing some video games, to sitting outside and sunbathing, or looking at YouTube videos. Like, I love wasting time, but on my terms. Something that I hate, though, more than anything, is wasting time on someone else's terms. So some examples of that is, I absolutely hate standing in lines. I refuse to do it. My wife hates it, but I don't like to wait in lines because I just don't like wasting that time. I also don't like to waste time on like small talk or conversations that are about gossip or unimportant things. I just don't enjoy that kind of thing. So when I'm overthinking, for me, that's like a big sign of wasted time. I'm literally spending time thinking about something that doesn't matter, that I can't fix, that I can't control. And so I don't like to do it, right? That's a risk. And sometimes I do overthink, right? But when I'm doing that, I'm wasting time. And I don't like wasting time unless it's on my terms. Okay, so the next one, anxiety and stress. Big anxiety person over here. In fact, in the future, I think I might do a whole episode on social anxiety because it's something I struggle with. But when I overthink stuff, my stress and anxiety go through the roof. I start to feel like I've lost control. I feel helpless, and I get that negative vibe, right? And it kind of just gets worse and worse and worse. The more I overthink, the more anxiety I get. The more anxiety I get, the more stress I get. It just kind of keeps going and going and going. So I try to nip that in the bud as soon as I can. If I feel like I'm overthinking, I don't want any more anxiety in my life. Trust me, I've got enough. So another risk of overthinking is you get more anxiety, you get more stress. And then the last one I think for me is, and maybe one of the most personal, is it really limits your growth, your personal growth, your career growth when you're overthinking, right? If you're spending time thinking about the stuff that doesn't matter, your success is limited because you have less time to worry and put your focus and intention on things that matter. So when you're focused on the wrong thing, you can't be focused on the right thing. So it's important to not overthink about things, again, not within your control, things that don't matter, things that have already happened in the past, right? Move forward, don't worry about those things because that's a risk. You're going to limit your growth if you're always overthinking things. There is no way you can be the best version of yourself when you're doing that. So those are the 4 big things that come to mind when I think of the risks of overthinking. So, we talked a little bit about the risks, and, I mentioned in the beginning that I've kind of overcome overthinking in some ways. So I want to sit here and tell you really honestly that I have not mastered it, right? I will never sit here and pretend like I am the master at anything. There's some things that I've done really well at and that I've spent a lot of years perfecting. Overthinking is something that I think I've gotten much better at, but I still have a long way to go. So I just wanted to preface that and let you know that Not a pro, but I will tell you that I've been able to overcome it quite a bit in my life. So a couple different things that really stand out when you're kind of overcoming overthinking. Number one, I think would be taking risks. And I know that seems a little counterintuitive, right? But for me, it seems like the more calculated risks I take, and those turned out successful, it causes my confidence to rise. And then I start to overthink a little bit less because I've taken a risk. I've been able to execute whatever the situation was, come out the other side successful. My confidence is up, and that shows me, hey, you are enough. Hey, you do have what it takes to be successful, so you don't need to overthink it, right? So that would be a big one for me, is I think taking risks really, really limits your overthinking as long as you are consistently doing it and either being successful or learning from the times that you haven't been successful. Another one for me would be physical exercise. So I know you might think, well, how does your physical body really affect your mental state? And well, maybe you don't think that, maybe you know the connection and it's obvious to you, but for me, it wasn't for years. And I think physical health is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing to help your mental game too, right? And if you're getting exercise at least 3 days a week, that seems to be the sweet spot. You're going to be in a better place, right? You're going to be more confident in your body, which is going to make you more confident in your work. You're going to have the mental clarity you need. You're going to be a better version of yourself. So take it from a guy who's kind of had, an ongoing kind of struggle, if you will, with being consistent with exercise and diet, right? There was times in my life that I was really overweight. But for me, when I find that I'm working out at least 3 days a week, I'm better. I'm overthinking things less because I'm focused on other things, right? I'm focused on working out. I'm focused on eating healthy, whatever it is. So believe it or not, physical exercise, I think, is a perfect tie-in to making sure you're the best version of yourself, which is obviously going to allow you to overthink a little bit less. Another one for me is creating a self-talk routine / mantra. So, we're all going to have the urge to overthink. Right? That's not going to go away. Even if you work on it all the time and you really try to make an effort not to overthink, it's still going to come up. But just because the urge comes up doesn't mean you have to give into it. So for me, the first thing that I do when I have an urge to overthink, right? Because we all get that urge, we start thinking, oh my gosh, what do I think here? Did that go well? Did I say the wrong thing in that meeting? Gosh, was she offended by my comment? Was I too rude in my text, right? But when those kind of feelings start to creep up, I check myself. I take a second to label, hey, Austin, I feel like you're going through an overthinking kind of vibe right now. So is this really something you want to spend your time on? And if it's not something I can control, I just tell myself, hey, it's out of my control, don't overthink. I literally tell myself that, hey, if there's something I can do to fix this or change this, great, I can spend my time thinking about it. If not, move on, Austin. And I'll just distract myself, right? I'll just go and do something else. Maybe I'll go on a walk or go hang out with my wife or take the dogs and play in the backyard, whatever it is, right? Just labeling those emotions in the moment, creating kind of a self-talk where you just tell yourself, hey, this is overthinking, let's move on. Another one for me would be talking about it with someone. I think it can also be really a good strategy to talk about it. If you're feeling like you're overthinking something, ask your friend, your spouse, your family member, hey, what do you think? This is a situation. Do you think I'm overthinking it? Something I do with my wife all the time, and she is amazing at being honest with me and saying, no, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think this is something that you might be able to change or fix. So no, keep thinking about it. Keep ruminating, right? Or she might say, Austin, why are you worried about what this person thought? They don't even know you. You send them an email, like, it's okay, move on. You were polite, you were kind, that's all you gotta do. So a lot of times she'll tell me those kind of things. So I think kind of checking with a spouse or a friend or a family member and saying, hey, am I overthinking this? Am I approaching this the right way? Can make a big difference. And then I think the last one, and this one is something that really hits close to home for me, is prayer. So, from an early age, my parents took us to church. We were at church multiple times a week, and I gotta be honest with you, as a kid, I kind of resented it from time to time, right? It was something that took over a big part of our life. And this was like my parents' thing and not really mine. But as I got older, right, after 18 or 19, I started to realize and trust in the power of prayer, right? So I started using prayer to help me get past things that were bogging me down, things that I was worried about, things I was stressed about. And, whether it was praying for a family member who had cancer, or a big promotion I maybe really wanted, or a friend who was struggling with something, I started praying more, and I realized that when I would give it up to God, or I'd say, hey, universe, whatever you want to call it, hey, I don't want to worry about this, you got this. It's funny, those things started to take care of themselves, and I started to worry less. So, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I will just tell you, for me, prayer is a powerful tool. It's something that I use daily if I can, and it's really, really helped me with overthinking, because at the end of the day, I don't want to have to worry about things. I want to give it up to a higher power who can take care of it, who's got my back, so that I don't have to stress about it. So the last thing, though, I would say as a strategy would be, when I start to go down those negative paths, right? When I start to overthink, I start to challenge my thinking, and I start to ask myself questions like, why are you feeling this way? And why are you being negative here? And why are you assuming the worst? Because a lot of times overthinking is assuming the worst. Why would we assume the worst of something before we've even approached the situation, right? I am not a negative person at all. At my core, that's just against who I am, but I still have negative thoughts, right? And so when I start to kind of go down that path, I like to pause and challenge my thinking and ask myself, hey, is this really something that I should be thinking about? Is this me just being scared or worried, or is this legitimate? So those are my 5 or 6 things that I've used in my life to help overthinking. And it helps, right? And I would say one of those isn't going to fix it overnight. And maybe I shouldn't even use the word fix, because we are who we are, and we're not here to just change and become some version of ourselves that's not true to who we are. We all have flaws, right? But I think it's using those strategies strategically here and there to overcome the overthinking when it pops up, because it's going to pop up. So I want to transition and kind of go into a story. So this story takes place in 2020, and me and my wife were living in Washington and had heard about this opportunity to come and move to New York for a new job. And so we needed to sell our home, right? And by the way, this was our first time selling a home. This was the first home we bought. So, the stuff we knew was really kind of from reading stuff on the internet or asking a friend. But the problem with this is there was nothing on the internet, and none of our friends had ever sold a home during a pandemic. So that was kind of where we were at, right? So we didn't really know kind of what to expect, and we were worried. So, to get the house listed, we needed to obviously pick a price. We needed to stage the home for pictures. We needed to determine our non-negotiables, timing, and all that kind of stuff. And we struggled to easily pick a price, right? There were no other homes for sale at this time in our neighborhood or in that area we lived in. I think there was 5 homes for sale total in the entire city. So nobody was selling their home virtually. And, we picked the price of $500K, right? We had bought the place 5 years earlier, I think for in the low 300s. And we thought, we put a little work in there, maybe it's worth $500K. And it's funny, this is where the overthinking started. As soon as we picked that price, we almost immediately started to doubt it. Was it too high? Would someone be willing to pay this much more than what we bought it for a few years prior? And would someone even be willing to buy a house during the pandemic? These are all things that we started to worry about. Next, we had to take pictures of the home, right? So we, asked the photographer to come. We staged the home, got it all ready. And as soon as the pictures were taken, I swear, me and my wife started to overthink. Gosh, why did we put the couch there? And oh my gosh, is it gonna look good? Are people even gonna like our house the way we staged it? And so again, we're overthinking. We even think about reaching out to the photographer to get new pictures taken. Cooler minds prevail, and so we decide against that, but we're just overthinking, spiraling, right? And then, then we thought, even things like, the kitchen, we loved our kitchen. We thought it was cute, but then when we saw it in pictures, we thought, gosh, maybe it's too outdated. Maybe we needed to update the kitchen before we sold it. Again, one thing after another, we're overthinking. So fast forward, the home gets put on the MLS, right? And we're moving and we're grooving. We're moving forward, and the home tour starts. So we're excited. We get lots of buzz, lots of people come in. And I think we had maybe 5 to 7 tours a week. No open houses because it was the pandemic, but lots of people are coming through. And this lasts for a month. And I don't know if you've ever sold a home, but getting your home ready for home tours and open houses can be a little bit stressful. I'm gonna admit something here in front of all of you guys. We don't always keep a clean house, right? So a lot of times it's like us running around the day before a home tour, cleaning up. So a lot of stress on the wife, a lot of stress on me. We had dogs, so there's hair everywhere. Anyways, we're getting through all that. And To our disappointment, we get no action, like no offers at all. And this goes on 1 month and then a month and a half. So, we're chatting with the realtor, and he recommends that we lower the price. And my wife and I are kind of debating this, right? Because we're like, we don't know if we really want to lower the price. It's only been on the market a month and a half. Maybe it's the right price. Maybe we just haven't found the right buyer. Again, we're overthinking everything. But we did listen to the realtor, and he said, let's go ahead and lower the price. So at this point, we're kind of feeling down, right? We're not getting any action. We have to lower the price. So at this point, we kind of decide to give it up to God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to spend any more time overthinking it. You're going to give us the right buyer at the right price, at the right time, and everything's going to work out. So anytime we'd have those thoughts where we were overthinking, we'd challenge each other and say, you know what? We're not going to worry about it. We've done everything that we can do. We've put the house in the best position possible to get a buyer, right? And it's funny, 2 weeks later, we have a nice couple come and tour the home, and they love it. And so they decide that they want to make an offer on the home. And they make us an offer in the high 400s, right? So we had lowered the price, they offered a little bit lower than that, and they were the perfect buyers. They had no drama. They didn't need us to make any changes to the home. They wanted a quick close. They were moving in from out of town, and they absolutely loved the area, and they loved our home. So, it's funny, we overthought every little decision along the process. And then as soon as we stopped overthinking, and the moment we gave it up to God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, something good happened, right? We got that buyer. Luckily, we were able to close a month later. We were able to get some nice proceeds. We were able to help a couple find a lovely home in the middle of the pandemic, and it all worked out. But it wasn't, an easy journey. And we definitely overthought things a lot. But it's just funny, I started to realize that the moment we let stuff go, the moment we stop overthinking and accept the fact that we've made the right decisions, we've done the best we can, good stuff starts to happen. So I hope by hearing that story, you see the value in not overthinking, and you also see that we all struggle with it. And it can be overthinking about things like selling a house, and it can be overthinking things like a situation at work or in a relationship. So it's gonna pop up. You're gonna overthink from time to time, but just realize that it's not something that you have to stay in. You don't have to stay in that overthinking mindset, and you can move on. You can choose to view the situation positively. You can choose to think about other things, and you can choose to realize that you can't control what you can't control, and spending any time on that is a waste of time. So before we wrap up, I want to give a challenge, right? I always like to leave you guys with something, a little thing that you can work on this week, a little thing that you can focus on. So this week, I want you to observe and label your overthinking. So next time you're feeling like you're overthinking a situation at work, somebody gave you an interesting response to an email you sent, you did a presentation, you weren't sure if it hit home the right way. I want you to take a second, label that feeling, and realize, okay, hey, maybe this is overthinking. Maybe I don't need to spend any more time worrying about this, and I should instead focus on what I can control and instead focus on the things that matter. So that's the challenge for this week. I want you to work on that. And then before we wrap up, call to action, what I'd love for you to do, if you could, leave me a review or a rating on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Those ratings and reviews mean so much to me. It shows me that I'm producing content that people enjoy, and it also helps others discover the content and sees what people are resonating with the messages and the thoughts that I have. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for listening and watching the first video podcast. Really excited for that. Make it a great day.